carrying on to the big news of yesterday, Mike Tomlin was asked about the offensive tackle position and the left tackle position more specifically, in the return of Dan Moore Jr. from an MCL sprain after the bye week. He practiced on Monday with the starters, but he wasn't positive that he was going to start in week 7 against the Rams. Broderick Jones, obviously the 14th overall pick, would be the guy. I think he's the fan favorite to start, but you just don't know what's going to happen. When Tomlin was asked about if Moore is healthy, if he will start, this is the quote, "That's a big if. We've got some work ahead of us. He'll be given the opportunity to show his progress over the course of the week, and we'll make that decision at the appropriate time. It doesn't behoove us to make hypothetical statements in the early portions of the week. He looked pretty good yesterday. We'll see where the week leads us." Your thoughts on that one when Tomlin dropped the "that's a big if"? Felt like he kind of was beating around the bush a little bit of the, is Dan Moore going to start? We don't really know. And kind of, I mean, maybe could be interpreted as him saying, why are you asking this question? Of course he's going to start, but also could probably be interpreted as, yeah, I don't want to make it public right now, but yeah, Broderick Jones is the starter. Unfortunately, we'll leave the door open for Dan Moore Jr. What were your thoughts yesterday?
Well, I just think if the gap between what Broderick Jones was doing and what Dan Moore was doing was wider, he would have been a little bit more assertive about, yeah, we need Dan back. Like, he's an important part of the offensive line. You know, we're absolutely going to slot him in if he's healthy enough. But quite honestly, I don't think the gap between Broderick and Dan is that wide. So I think this might be, I think he's just, first and foremost, actually, I did not really kind of think that the Dan Moore injury was going to be this serious, especially coming off the bye. I thought he'd be back in the lineup right away. So I think that's a little bit concerning. But also, I mean, look, Broderick was pretty good against the Ravens. I don't think he gave them many issues. So I think they're both comfortable, and that would force them to kind of say to Dan Moore, like, look, we're not going to need just 75%. We're not going to slide you in there at 75% just because we need a tackle there. We need an NFL tackle there, or, they're comfortable waiting until he's absolutely 100% because Broderick has done, at least for one game, has done pretty well or 1.5 games. I forget when Dan went down.
Yeah, I guess it'd be 1.5.
Yeah, about roughly 1.5 or whatever. So I think I think they are more comfortable waiting. And I think you can kind of interpret it two ways, as either, Dan's real far away from a return, or Dan is just not 100% yet. And they're real comfortable waiting until he actually is. Yeah,
I agree. I also think they're in a sticky situation, a more complicated situation than people want to narrate it as. And a lot of people are looking at it like, I can't believe that Dan Moore Jr. would start again. You have your first round pick. You got to toss him into the fire. You got to see what happens. I don't disagree with that. I think that is the right course of action, to let the young guy get experience in a game until he starts screwing up. But I also think that Broderick Jones did look good in his first start. He hasn't always looked good in the NFL. I don't think he's looked particularly good when he'd had to step in before he had to step in for Dan Moore in Baltimore. And I think that the Steelers are looking at that. Like, why would you allow him to struggle out there? And then you raise a billion other questions, and they understand that. A lot of people who are yelling at the narrative don't understand that. It's the same thing as like Kenny Pickett or so on and so forth. You tossed Kenny into the fire last season, and after he struggled for 2-3 games, immediately the conversation sparked. Kenny's not it. Kenny's not the guy. Maybe Kenny is. Maybe the Steelers don't have a quarterback. Maybe that's going to happen with Broderick Jones. He's going to struggle. People are going to notice it. People are going to say, oh, man, maybe Broderick's, what a wasted pick. This guy could be a bust. You never know. I think the Steelers have a full understanding of the pressure that comes with putting him in a football game right now and letting him be the full-time starter. And they want to assure themselves. I think that was the biggest thing. Is it kind of sounded like, yeah, we're non-committal, but I think it was more of a, we really don't know if we're 100% ready to make Broderick the full-time starter or make Dan Moore the full-time starter moving forward. And, until we have a definite on that, we're not going to put any added pressure. Because, like, think about it. Think about what today brings if Mike Tomlin walks to the podium and says, either one of those guys are a starter. Think about it. Today, all we're talking about is Broderick Jones being the starter or the backup. He's the only person getting interviewed in the locker room as either the starter or the backup, and he's getting hounded with questions about either replacing Dan Moore or not replacing Dan Moore, and that sucks. Like, and Mike Tomlin understands that. Everybody understands that. I think that to a degree he was being genuine. You know, he said it in his Mike Tomlin Tuesday attitude kind of way, but I think there is some real train of thought of, you know, we're not just trying to keep this a secret. It's like we really don't know what direction we're going to go yet.
Right, but I think if they had said, you know, when healthy, Dan is our starter.
Yes.
Then I don't think Broderick is facing any kind of questions. You know, like he's not. I mean, that's just business as usual. That, you know, he wouldn't face any more questions than he does on a normal week. So that was what confused me a little bit. Is that this was not. I mean, Mike kind of framed it as some insane hypothetical, but I don't think it is. Like it's if Dan Moore is healthy, like if and when. I mean, that's not a.
Yeah. Do you anticipate that? Do you anticipate it's Dan Moore when healthy?
Yeah, I think so. I don't. I mean, I kind of. I know Dan hasn't been great this season. Probably not as good as I thought he would be, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think for all the same reasons that you outlined, the pressure of Broderick being a full-time starter right away. I just don't. He did well in one start. I don't know if he's ready for a full season of that. So I think Dan. I don't know. It feels a little weird saying this, but I think you throw Dan in until the wheels fall off, like until he actually proves that he's incapable of being a part of a winning offensive line, which I don't think he's done yet. You got to roll with him. And I think I don't know. You keep Broderick on the back burner for as long as you can a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the longer that you kind of delay having to throw him into the fire right away, the better it will be for him long term, you know?
Yes, I agree.
And I think he's got a lot of growing to do. So I think for all those reasons, that's why I think Dan is probably the better option at this point.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I think that's if you're going to play, it's like what Broderick Jones has been able to develop as in these first 5 weeks, I think is pretty significant, because you saw it like when Broderick Jones first showed up, there were a lot of instances. I mean, all summer, we saw it all summer. Dan Moore was the better left tackle. And then Broderick develops. He admits he's raw. Like he literally said it before the Baltimore game. He's like, yeah, I was pretty raw coming into the NFL. I'm like, all right, that's huge. And then he starts and he doesn't play bad. But I think that's how the Steelers view it. I agree with you. I think that, and I think they agree with you. Like, why would you remove something that isn't broken? You know, Dan Moore might not be a superstar and he might have his issues, but he hasn't been like alarmingly concerning at this point. You know, we're talking about Mason Cole being alarmingly concerning right now. Dan Moore is not in that same category. So why would you for one take a risk that Broderick Jones is going to kind of take a step back or have his mishaps, and two, why would you kind of waste Dan Moore? You know what I mean? And that's weird. A lot of people are going to say, like, what do you mean you can't waste anybody who isn't good? Yeah, but you could utilize him as a safety blanket until you don't have to do it. You know what I mean? Like you could look at Dan Moore and just say, well, he's okay because we're working on Broderick and we need somebody to kind of fill in here so that we could perfect Broderick. And until we can't do that anymore, I agree. I think that's the course of action. Until
you're 100% sure that Broderick is an upgrade over him, which I don't think is. I don't think
not this season, not right now.
So until that's the case, you gotta wait it out.
Yeah, exactly. And if this is next season, it's a totally different conversation. He's a sophomore in the NFL. It's his year. You start him. But right now, there's just no. You know what I mean? You just let him rock. You see what you got in Dan, and then I think everything's comfortable from there. You know what I mean? There's no drama. There's no issues. It's just Broderick's like, yeah, man, I get it. Like, I'm a rookie. I'm 5 games into my NFL career. I'll start when the time comes. I know it's coming. I think everything will be okay. I agree. I think that's the course of action. I wouldn't anticipate a change, and people are going to lose their minds, but I would not anticipate a change.